Hello and welcome back to the channel. It's Mark from PowerSonic and Apprentice 121. Today I'm going to take you through the installation of this Verso consumer unit. Time-lapse the whole thing. I'm going to talk through some of my tips and tricks and speak about some of the things I really like about this board. I'm not going to waffle on too much at the start, but if you've got any questions along the way, please do remember to drop them in the comments and I'll do my best to help. Let's get straight on with the video.
So we can see here we've got the Verso twin stack board and it has got some twin and earth cables leading into it. So this has been primarily set up to allow for some space in between our overcurrent protective devices and room for new circuits to potentially be dropped in the future. And these twin stack boards across all manufacturers give us loads of opportunities to do that. So when we're looking at battery storage, PV, EV, all of the traditional high powered circuits to do with showers, heating, cooking, as everything is moving to all electric, we are going to need these larger boards. And in reality, when you compare them to the footprint of some of the things that they use on the continent, these are still quite small, really. And I think we're well behind the curve on allowing some proper space for electricians to work their magic within. However, this is a step in the right direction. And this one is a 28-way board from Verso. There's 26 usable ways if you're going to incorporate the SPD as we have on this board here. And in the top row, we've gone for all of the high power circuits. So, for example, we've got our EV up there, we've got the PV, the battery storage, the cooker, and also a hob. And they're all going to sit up there and allow for a space in between the modules and just separate things out nicely. So there's none of those circuits that are going to be under consistent load for over an hour's period of time next to each other, causing a warming effect more great than is needed. You can see I'm just working away, stripping off all of the outer sleeving on the twin and earths, and I use the Nipex stripping tool for that. It gives a real nice, neat, straight cut at the back of those. That's on the smaller cables. So down at the bottom, we've got 1.5 mils for the lighting circuits, and we've got the 4 mil power radial circuits. We'll speak a bit about those when we get to pop the RCBOs in a bit. And at the top, we've had to strip those the old-fashioned way because 6 mil is a little bit too big to get through the automatic stripping tool. And this is the way I usually set my boards out. So we'll try and bring the cables through the right entry points in the back of the board, close to where they're going to be finishing up in their protective devices, just to try and allow for as neat a wiring solution as possible. You can see on these Verso boards, they come with those plastic grommet or entry plates in the back of these boards. So there's 4 holes in this board. It comes with 4 plates, which is really useful. They have different knockouts. You can see I've opened all of them to illustrate what's available for us. And you can, if you want, take the whole opening out itself to leave those oval shapes in full to use if you've got a particularly large bunch of cables coming through, which I'm thinking when you're retrofitting over existing wiring is going to be really useful because stuff can come from all over the place. So you've got plenty of options in the back of the board. There is knockouts across the top and bottom and some nice tail holes around the sides as well. And you can see with this, there is the main switch with the tails clamp, which is nice. So you can secure those tails quite nicely. If you're going to use this on a TT install, it's particularly useful because those of you who do a lot of that work will know you can omit the RCD protection on those tails if they are secured and not likely to come into contact with any metallic parts. It's not something that I do on our TT installs, but you are allowed to do it, and having the tails clamp built into the board is a nice feature. So you can see I'm tucking the CPCs up the back there, and again with the terminals, as long as you are over 1.5 mil, there is no need to double your ends over. If you're 1.5 mil or under, then you should be doubling those over as per manufacturer instructions. That's in the terminal bars, so your earth and neutral bars. In the cage clamps, you can just put them in without any doubling over. There is historical use of doubling over in every terminal to basically ram it full of copper. You can make off your connections without that doubling over quite satisfactorily if you take your time, and cage clamps are more than able to do that. So just something to keep in mind when you are dressing away your consumer units. You'll see when I get to the bottom row, we double over those CPCs on the 1.5 mil twin and earths, and I've also done it on the 4 mils, even the 1.5 mil size for the CPC. You could argue it wasn't really necessary, but we've done it anyway. So you can see I'm just doubling those ends over with the pliers, getting them all prepped so they're nice and simple to drop into the earth bar. And again, on this board, you can see coming out of the main switch at the top, you've got the neutral fly leads. One runs off to that top neutral bar, and one drops down to the connection of the bottom neutral bar. And then you can see also we've got the line that's dropping out at the bottom of that main switch and making its way into the little connection block on the bottom, so we can connect our bus bar in down there as well. And there's loads of wiring room in these. There's plenty of space to tuck and hide away your CPCs. So you can see as I'm working away across this bottom earth bar, we've got plenty of space behind there, so you've not got all your cables on show, which is nice. And these earth bars are actually screwed through into the enclosure. You'll note there's no fly lead linking between the two, as was the case in the Proteus board. I'm not sure if that is a good or a bad thing, but there is continuity between those earth bars. I do check that through the course of this video just to be absolutely sure, but it is welded onto the enclosure, and there is a screwed connection between those 2 points. So for me, it's adequately connected on the earth bars, and Verso have obviously done some research and testing into that themselves. So you can see I've got them all tucked away. I'm allowing a bit of spacing again on the bottom. I am putting the lighting circuits all together. They're not going to be anything like under consistent load. It's all low power LED. And the power circuits, we have got some elements of separation in terms of the load and the consistent load aspect, and we'll speak about that when we drop the RCBOs in, but they are sat next to each other. It's something we need to be more aware of as we are now moving to times where some of these circuits are going to be on the consistent load for over an hour period, and they are going to be running towards their maximum rated value. That's when these things come into play. And if you check the manufacturer data sheets, and Verso have it on their website, you can see if there is any derating you're going to have to apply because of those thermal and magnetic effects of having those circuits in close proximity to each other within the consumer unit. So you can see with these, I'm dressing in the RCBOs. And again, I said this on all of the manufacturers' boards when we've done these, the fly leads on them, they can't win really. They're either going to be too long or too short, depending on what board you're working in. They're trying to cover off all bases in the length of cable that comes on the RCBOs, and I think these are about right. You can reach across to the neutral bars from anywhere in the board, and the bits you've got left to tuck away aren't so long as to be a total rat's nest. And of course, you can shorten them and use your ferrules on the end should you wish, but that's generally making work for yourself when there is already a pre-crimped end on these fly leads, and just being able to tuck your wires away is a lot easier. And if something has to move later on, you're not restricting yourself with the length of that cable. Just speaking about the mini RCBOs, they are Type A. They are what we can term double pole. We've spoken about that before on the channel, switch neutral, but for all intents and purposes, when you've got an EV circuit that needs to open line and neutral, this satisfies that. Same with the PV and battery storage as well. I'm not sure if they're bi-directional. I'm going to ask Verso on that one. So that's something to factor in if you are running PV and battery storage, and these are going to be potentially running in reverse. There is some elements of that you need to consider. And as I've shown with the Proteus boards in the past, those are bi-directional, and Hager have just very recently released a bi-directional RCBO of their own, and they've got some interesting advice around the size of conductors they want terminating into their overcurrent protective device. I think they've quoted a 10 mil as the minimum size on their 32 amp RCBOs. I might be speaking out of turn, it could be 40, but it's interesting that they're specifying a minimum size conductor. Plenty of room in these terminals on the Verso RCBOs, and you'll see they are a similar form factor and size to the MCBs themselves. You see the MCB and SPD down the end there. And again, that is as per design from Verso. I've shared this picture and video over on Instagram already, and someone asked about the SPD being at the end of the board and, supposed to be close to the main intake as possible. And that's kind of what we've all been taught and had drummed into us from when SPDs became a bit of a thing in the regs a few editions ago. Amendments and additions perhaps is a better terminology. But we need to think about that in terms of the cable lengths connecting in the SPD. And with this one being sat on the busbar, essentially, there's negligible impedance through that. That's drawing back to the old wives' tale of putting your highest rated breakers at the start of your board all bunched together and working away to the smallest. I was taught that. It's something I've done for a long time. And I guess the logic was been a shorter length of bus bar allowed for the current to be drawn more easily, but really the impedance through it is of negligible impact. The SPD going at the end is absolutely the same. You've still got the same length CPC coming out of it, and neutrals, the same length line looping across between the MCB. And again, speaking about the Proteus board with the bus bar mounted SPD that I've shared on the channel before, that can obviously be fitted anywhere you like in your enclosure to keep those neutral and CPC leads as short as possible. That should be the goal, if you like. And the other point to make is that we should be repeating our SPD protection at consumer units as you work into an install. So if your main intake is at a meter cabinet on an external wall that's over 10 meters away from where your consumer unit lives, you should really have an SPD in your rec main switch in that meter cabinet, and then repeat your SPD again in the consumer unit for all of your final circuits. And likewise, if you've got a garage board where you're going to have an EV charger out of it, again, repeat the SPD protection in it. It may only need to be type 3 in the product, so it's well worth checking, but it's something to keep in mind. And you can see the bus bars on these are actually a different size, but me picked the longer one up to try and fit in the top first, and realised it didn't fit and it was fouling the SPD, and thought Verso had dropped a clanger by supplying a bus bar that's too long, and then I realised it's just me that's a bit of a wally, so we got the right one out. And these bus bars are silver coated. I think that's the terminology that they use. They're not solid silver, obviously, because I'd be weighing it in the price point these boards come at, but they are silver coated. And again, I bought this from the electrician's pod.shop. So if you're not familiar with that, Sam from the electrician's podcast has created his own online shop, predominantly selling Verso stuff. It is exceptional value. This stuff was not expensive. I think the whole board with all the RCBOs, and I got more than is shown in this video, was well under £400. So, you cannot knock that for what you get pound for pound. It's really, really difficult to beat Verso. And the board itself has lots of nice features. I don't know if you can see the little triangle in the top there. That's been put in so you can hang your board up on a screw or a nail or something to hold it up in place while you mark your fixing holes, which is really useful. You don't need to hold it against the wall with your head while you mark the holes to then drill out. You can hang it up, do all of that stuff, and then fix it back to the wall. So thinking of the installer, the DIN rail is among the most strong I've ever found in a consumer unit. There's absolutely hardly any rock and wobble. Obviously, it's difficult in a wide board to get it totally eliminated, but it is really, really solid. None of these breakers are moving and going out of line, as you might find with some of the more budget end boards. They do stay absolutely square and straight, and the same when you're tightening them down onto the bus bar. They don't move and sway. There's no need to clamp them together, as I've seen some people do on various videos around the world of TikTok and Instagram. These do actually stay rock solid straight. And you'll know I'm stripping the ends of these with my Klein croppers. They're 160mm croppers. They're among the best I've found. Again, got those from CEF. I think they were around 17 or 18 quid in the sale. It's absolutely brilliant value. They're the sharpest and best croppers I've ever used. And I really rate them. And again, with the Klein drivers on these ones, I think they're exceptionally difficult to beat on the handles on those Klein drivers. If you've not tried them, they're well worth giving a run out. And again, they're definitely in my top 3 of electricians' screwdrivers. And again, I bought those fair and square, so it's not sponsored in saying that. I do really rate them. And you can see just stopping to have a little conversation here, I think, with Matthew, who was up on a roof, just to see what he needed to be doing, checking in there. So taking a quick call while we're wiring this consumer unit away. And these are just the lighting circuits. And again, like I say, they can be placed together because the overall rating of them, you're talking probably under an amp on each circuit. These are 6 amp breakers. They're running nothing like close to their maximum rating. There's going to be no issue in terms of them getting a bit warm to the point they need any further derating consideration than that. We are going to leave a bit of space in the middle. And we're thinking of that was I've left space in the middle at the top as well. If someone's going to drop a circuit in, it makes it as easy as possible for them to have good access to do it, allowing a bit of working room. We all know what it's like going to add a circuit into an existing board and you've got wires rammed everywhere, trying to fish stuff through. It can get a bit awkward, so I thought we'll separate ours out to the outer extremities of the board and leave the middle free for someone to poke a shot at down the line in the future. And also for your testing, it just allows plenty of room to draw those cables out. And you'll note I've dressed these down the back, so we kind of pop in some slack down the back of the breakers, and then we form a loop over the top, and again just using 2 fingers to set that spacing. If you cut in the same place every time, your loops end up the consistent size, and that just allows for somebody to pull those cables forward during testing, and not be working with like 10mm slack to try and do an EICR down the line or something. It just makes things a little bit easier for the next person coming along. You see, we nearly got this dressed away now. There's a few RCBOs just to pop in at the end for those power circuits. And speaking about them, we've kind of got a 32 amp circuit running off to do some kitchen sockets. There's then a 20 amp radial, which again is in 4mm, but that's running off to serve a bedroom. So it's going to be very lightly loaded. So you've got essentially a blank next to that 32 amp, and then we've got a lightly loaded circuit the other side of it. We're then dropping in the other 32 amp circuit, which is feeding the downstairs sockets, which again you might expect to draw a little bit more power than the upstairs bedrooms. And just to finish off, again, another radial for those upstairs bedrooms in the 4mm size, again on a 20 amp breaker, which we'd expect to be very lightly loaded. And when there is a hairdryer running, it's for short duration, so you can still place those together. Obviously, we had room in the board if we wanted to allow a space, but again, trying to leave the middle open, as I said. So we have kind of factored in a little bit of, sensible planning with what might be running towards its maximum load, but still able to place these circuits together. There's no need to be going for these huge boards and having a space between every single breaker. You can end up causing yourself a problem when you don't need to, and also costing the client money. You just need to think about these things and have a bit of foresight in the way you lay your circuits out, and you can usually cover it off in most cases without any spacing. We could have split those lighting circuits out, for example, around some of the high power stuff and not had an issue. But in this case, with the dual stack board, we've got that space, so why not use it? And again, with the Busbar, you can see it slots straight in there, and we're just going to run along. And of course, I'm going to talk all this down and run through a full test sequence on it, but that's a pretty boring segment to include in a time lapse of a consumer unit going away. And those of you who watch my content quite regularly will know I dress these boards away first and then take them apart to do the testing. So if there is any issues in there, I can sort them out at that time for the next person coming along. I just put 1 cable tie on those neutrals just to loosely hold them down the back of the DIN rail, and we'll tuck everything else up as best we can. And I think that's come out reasonably well. I'm going to score myself a 7 out of 10 on that. If anyone wants to see the pictures of the board, it's over on the Apprentice 1-to-1 Instagram page. That's Apprentice 1-to-1 on Instagram. And if you're wanting to check out where you can get this stuff yourself, go off and look at the electrician's pod.shop, where Sam will be more than happy to welcome you as a new customer.
So there we have it, the installation of this twin stack consumer unit from Verso. It is a 28 way board, however, if you've got the SPD in there with its MCB, there's 26 ways that are usable. There are loads of nice little touches mixed in with this board that I really like. One is the little triangle in the back, so you can hang it up to get your fixings all marked and positioned, and that's consistent through the range of all of Verso's boards. Then we've obviously got the circuit protection devices as well, which are the double pole or equivalent switch neutral. These are the type A's, they're 6KA rated. There's a good range of protective devices as well as we'd expect for our RCBOs and MCBs. There is loads of entry points in this board, which I really like. You can make your own openings in the side if you wish, but there's plenty of knockouts all the way around for tails and cable entry. And in the back there's those 4 knockouts that I've used on this install, and it comes with the plastic plates that push through those holes, so there's no need for us to use grommet strip, which is super handy for those of you like me who hate grommet strip. So kudos to Verso for chucking those in. The protective devices line up really well on the DIN rail. It seems really solid, there's no sag or movement in that. There's the silver plated Busbar, which improves electrical connection, which is a nice touch. And the lid goes on really easily. It's got a nice finish to it, so it's like a matte white. It's hard to describe when you're not one of these artistic types of people, but it does look a little bit different to some of the shinier consumer unit options that are out there. I think it looks nice, or as nice as these things can look on somebody's wall. And I bought it from Sam at the pod shop, so that's through his electrician's podcast. If you go off and check that out, there'll be a link in the description alongside this video. Sam is making a real effort to get a shop going through the podcast where he's got some cracking deals on there. This was not expensive for everything that you get. Obviously I've got 20 or 30 breakers mixed in with this kit I ordered, the twin stack board, and in comparison to lots of other options out in the marketplace, I don't think anything beats it on value. So you can go off and have a look at Sam's pod.shop and show him a little bit of support. Get your orders in. You'll not be disappointed with the Verso stuff. I won't be stood here recommending it if I didn't think it was legitimately decent. Nobody has paid me for this content whatsoever. I've just decided to make it primarily because I enjoy doing content like this, and I think it's something nice to do on the channel, sharing lots of different options of consumer units, and also to try and support Sam in his effort with his shop, because I think it's an epic idea, and it would be great if the electricians out there could go and show a little bit of support to a Sparky just like us, who's trying to make an impact in the wholesale game, and get your orders in. If you've got any questions in and around this video, please do drop them in below and I'll be happy to try and help. If you want to criticise something I've done, take your shot. I'm not bothered about that. I learn and develop if I've made something wrong, or if you've got a suggestion where I could change my approach to do something better. I am all ears for that in the comments as well. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.